Ladies and gentlemen, this Tech Tribunal analysis, we're going to be doing a comparison of the Xbox One and PlayStation 4 versions of Watch Dogs with the frame rate. So I have to say that I'm very impressed with the frame rate for both consoles. Now I've done this in an article as well because it's going to serve to highlight a couple of the issues that we're going to be discussing. So we've discussed the graphics of both versions, and there is definitely a slight difference between the PS4 and Xbox One. The PS4, as I've mentioned previously, does run at a higher resolution, has slightly better shadows and so on, but that was in the previous analysis. Question is there still a difference when it comes to the frame rate? Well, ever so slightly. Despite the fact that I've put the game through its paces. You know, the entire teams had attempts to tank the frame rate, and there are a couple of instances where it does dip below 30, but they are few and far in between, at least from what we can find. Now, in addition to that, there are some issues of visual tearing. These are definitely more common on the Xbox One version of the game. They don't ruin it, per se, but you'll see a few examples of this throughout the title. Now, with the Xbox One, I actually managed to get it to dip to 27 frames per second at one point, especially when there's an achievement that pops up. Weirdly enough, when an achievement pops up, the frame rate will definitely take a dive if there's a lot of stuff going on screen. If you're just standing there, for example, with not much going on, you're just pretty much standing in a room, the frame rate's going to remain pretty consistent. On the other hand, if there's explosions in the background, as you'll see throughout the video, then it can start taking a hit. The PS4 version, as far as I can see, does not have these issues, but that's not to say that the PS4 doesn't have any issues at all. It does suffer slightly from tearing. I've put a few examples of this both in the article and the video, but it's not quite so bad as the Xbox One version. Now, I'm not, however, going to say that the Xbox One version is considerably worse. It's not a case of the Tomb Raider repeating all over again. Ubisoft have done an extremely good job, and for the most part, the 30 frames a second counter simply does not move from within the video. It was actually so bad that at one point I actually thought the analysis system wasn't working correctly, and then I actually got a few divots, and I was actually going through some bits manually. And nope, as far as I can tell, well, as far as we can tell, there's no issues really. The game, as I said, does dip occasionally, but it's few and far in between. In tight spaces, you'll see that we've managed to make absolutely ridiculous explosions, both in small spaces and large spaces. At night, it doesn't really seem to make a difference. For the most part, the frame rate is fairly stable, and you'll not really notice major input lag. You will, however, if you're very sensitive to visual tearing and you do have access to both versions, be slightly better off with the PS4. The only real reason I say that is because it does have a slight graphical edge naturally anyway, so why would you want to also have the visual tearing? But aside from that, to be honest with you, it's pretty much par for the course, and you're not going to be getting a massive difference in terms of frame rate between either version. And the times it does dip, it's very subtle anyway. So unless you're extremely sensitive, you're probably not going to notice 1 to 2 frames per second drop. And as I said, it's very rare this happens anyway. It's mostly in large open environments, as far as I can tell. It certainly may pop up when you're having an achievement, but most of the times that happens, it's not too much of a big deal anywho. So my personal thoughts right now is the PS4 version does lead the way. It's not by a considerable margin at all. It does graphically have the edge, definitely. It definitely looks a little bit sharper. The shadows are a little bit better, as I've discussed in the previous videos. But frame rate wise, they're pretty much even. The Xbox One version is slightly inferior, but certainly not to the degree of, say, Tomb Raider, which was pretty bad, and a few other titles that we could also mention, for example, Thief. So overall, if you're an Xbox One fan, there's absolutely no reason to lament buying this on your system at all. Watch Dogs runs absolutely beautifully. If, on the other hand, you do happen to own both systems and you don't have, for example, a particular reason that you need to buy it on one system, for example, ones, I don't know, for example, your brothers or whatever, then I'd definitely recommend the PS4 version. It also does have that slight amount of extra content for free. As I've mentioned previously, I don't particularly like that model. I don't really think that it's fair to the other platform owners, but that's just how they've done it, and I cannot control that. So there you have a very slight nod to the Xbox One version, to the PlayStation 4 version, but it is very subtle indeed. Anyway, hopefully you've enjoyed the video. As I said, I'll see you guys soon. Take care, and bye for now.